Hi, I'm Clara Rose, and this is Influence Matters, the show where each week I share tips, tricks, tools, hacks, resources, and sometimes interviews with savvy influence builders just like you who want to strategically and intentionally cultivate and build influence, because we know that influence is how we organically generate leads for our business, ministry, cause, or brand, and that is why we're here today, my friends. Before we start, of course, I have to say thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to Rosedale Publishing. They specialize in business books for entrepreneurs and professionals just like you who want to create a book, a business brand book to use as a tool in their marketing efforts, and of course, generate leads organically for their business, ministry, cause, or brand. And then, of course, a special thank you to the fine folks over at Tampa Bay Multimedia and WeBeam TV, where we are here today in the studio, for they truly make this show possible. So thank you, thank you. Okay, so today we're going to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart. You know, each week we talk about things that are matters of influence. And influence is so integral. I can't even speak this morning. It's so important. It's such an important part of your business when you're trying to generate leads organically. Now, we can pay for advertising, and of course, we love word of mouth that happens when we take good care of our customers, but there's nothing like influence for generating those leads organically. And leads, that leads to revenue, and that creates a sustainable business, doesn't it? So we're going to talk today about the one thing that most quickly, most easily will grow your influence, build your influence, and that is writing. So today we're going to talk about writing to build influence. So I have 3 easy, simple steps for you when you're thinking about writing to build influence in your business. And those are looking at your writing preferences, looking at your message clarity, and then formatting and structure. So these are the things that are going to make a difference when you're writing for influence. So you might say, but Clara, why do I need to worry so much about my message and my formatting and all those things? So just really quickly, my little soapbox that I get on is that it matters when people see something in writing from your business, ministry, cause, or brand. It matters that it's correct. It matters that there's good structure. It matters that it's formatted. It matters that your message is clear, and it matters when you're writing in different formats that you know what you're doing. So let's jump into ways that you can work on your writing preferences. Let's look at those first. What are your writing preferences? Now, what I mean by that is, where do you want to put your message in writing for the world? That might be copy, it might be blog posts, it could be magazine articles, and all of those are great options. Of course, your book, which we're going to touch on a little bit more in a few minutes. Ask yourself if you prefer handwriting or typing your words. Do you prefer a long format, or do you prefer a short format? So when you ask yourself, first of all, how do I prefer to write? This is the capture piece of your message. Some people really love the sitting down with paper and pencil, paper and pen, whatever you like. They think better that way. And if I want to sit by the pool in the morning, that's me. I'm going to have a tablet and my coffee, right? Sitting out by the pool, enjoying the fresh morning air, and jotting down my notes. So that might be where I build out the bullet points that become my message. That might be where I work on edits, different ways that I pull information together. Of course, at some point you do have to hit the typewriter or the keyboard, I guess is the truth. Typewriters are gone, aren't they? But the keyboard, you're going to have to hit that at some point and create digital out of it, because no matter where you submit your work, it needs to be in digital format. There's actually statistics, which I'm not a huge statistic person, surprisingly, since I love strategy and strategic things. Statistics kind of bore me, but there are statistics that show there is a connection between memory and writing it out by hand. I'm not sure what that is, but it's true. So you want to really remember something, write it out by hand, and it'll stick better in your brain, I promise. Okay. let's look at the different forms that you could use for your writing. As you're deciding, how am I going to get my message out to the world? You might use long form, short form, or just plain old copywriting. So what is long form? Long form is usually over 2,000 words, and it's intended to inform or educate. Now, of course, a book falls in this category. Articles and magazines might fall in this category. Anything longer form. Even some online publications will want a 2,000 word count. Short form is usually around 1,000 words, and it's best for engagement and connecting. Now, most of the magazine articles that I've done over the years have been considered short form or between short and long form. 1,000 to 1,500 words is a really common requirement from magazines, whether it's an online magazine or if it's a printed press magazine. And then, of course, copywriting. These are usually things that are 500 words or less, and they're used for marketing or media. So like your blog posts for social media, those might be 500 words to 1,000 words. Just remember that people have short attention spans when you're talking about marketing and media messaging. If you get really long-winded in a blog post, unless you're really careful about your structure and your formatting, you will lose people quickly. And we're going to talk about formatting in a couple minutes because it really does make a difference. Now, if you're talking social media posts, this is still a form of copywriting. I can't tell you how many times I see people's social media where their post, even though they have a lovely graphic in the background, sometimes they don't even bother to do graphics, which just aren't as effective. But either way, their grammar is poor or they're not capitalizing things. Just let me say this to the world. The I, standing alone, is always capital. Always. If you get a text from me, I'm going to capitalize the I because that is the way that it's done, my friend. Just be aware of those things. If you are of a younger generation or those kinds of things don't matter to you, consider this. Who is your audience? Does it matter to them? Because if you write something for me or I'm going to consume it in some way, it matters to me because those kinds of things matter to me. Other professionals, it's going to matter to them as well. So you have to think about for your brand, is it going to make a difference? I'm willing to bet that it does. So just something for you to tuck away in your brain, something important to remember. Let's talk about the nuts and bolts of writing. Anyone can write if you have a good copy editor. It's really 100% about your message clarity, your formatting, and the structure. Those are all necessary, and guess what? A good editor is going to do those things for you. So I'm here to say, hire an editor, my friends. An editor isn't going to cost you a lot of money, but they're going to make a huge difference when it comes to how your messaging looks to the world, how you present yourself as a professional or entrepreneur to the world. People want to connect with people who speak their language. And if you're after professionals and other entrepreneurs, other business owners, it's going to be really important that you put your best foot forward, and an editor can really help you do that. Now, not all editors are created equal. There are copy editors who will help you just with the editing of basic copy, and there are editors who work on structure and format. There are editors who work on all sorts of different types of things, sometimes social media posts. So whatever format that you're looking for, find yourself an editor that specializes in that kind of work. They are worth the money, I promise you. Then, of course, if you're hiring somebody for an editing of your book, that is a whole different ball game. So, for instance, when people hire me in my business, I do editing. I do developmental editing. If you've not heard that term before, it simply is the kind of editing that develops your content as it goes. So you can get your ideas, thoughts, concepts, whatever they are, out of your brain and into written format, and then a good copy or a good developmental editor can go in and make it flow nicely and develop the content for you a little bit. They're going to help you with grammar, punctuation, sentence structure in general, and then flow. Really important when you're considering a book. And of course, I do offer that when I co-write with somebody. That's part of what we work on, is that you have a good outline to follow, a good structure to follow, so that you don't meander too much. Because meandering in a book is going to lose your reader. Not that we're talking about books today, but I'm telling you, as you talk about editors, finding the right editor for the job is absolutely important. Okay, let's move on to the next piece before we run out of time. Let's talk about message clarity. So, why is it important to have message clarity? Well, what is the why of the content that you're writing? What is the purpose behind the content you're writing? Is it to get leads? Is it to inform or educate your reader? What is the why behind the writing of your content? We're not writing for no reason at all, of course. And then what? You need to have a clear outline for what you want to write about. So if you are trying to educate, you need to have clear bullet points that drive home the actual message that you're trying to get across. And then who are you writing for or about? Who are you writing to? Who are you writing about? This is just good when you're pulling together your content to have in mind. So if you're writing for people who are at a professional level in an organization, you're going to write differently than you're going to write for somebody who's just a layman who doesn't have the same understanding or knowledge that the professional in that industry is going to have. So I think you've probably heard this before. There's a couple of gurus out there that talk about know your why, start with your why. Really important. Start with your what, but really important to start with your who. I do have a pro tip for you, of course. If you use a tool like Grammarly, or in Word, you can use Editor if you're a Word person, because grammar really does matter. And if you turn on the readability statistics in Editor, there's a setting for spelling, grammar, conciseness, formality, punctuation, conventions. All of those things are looked at. And so with a click of it's this simple. Upper right-hand corner, it says Editor, and there's a little pencil. Click on it, and it's going to look through your entire document, and it's going to look for those things. Are you using good sentence structure? Is it concise? Is your grammar good? Is your punctuation good? It's going to give you suggestions. And then once you correct those things, actually a little pop-up is going to say, 100%. A little pop-up is going to tell you what your reading level is. Now, your reading level becomes more important as you talk to the general population, understanding that I don't totally agree with this, but the experts say you really should write at a 5th or 6th grade level. Now, I would hope that most of you who are watching this, we read and write and function at higher than a 5th or 6th grade level. But I suppose that's not always a good assumption for everyone. I like to keep mine hovering around the 9th or 10th grade level. Then I know that pretty much anyone who consumes my content with my ideal customer is going to be able to read and comprehend. Depending on the project that I'm working on with a client, I may adjust that. So if you're writing for a younger audience or a less educated audience, you could drop that. But it's going to give you a readability. It's also going to tell you how many passive sentences you've used, some of those things that are important. If you really care about getting good message clarity, you're going to pay attention to those things. You're going to pay attention to how is my end reader going to be able to consume this content? Is it easy to read? Does it flow? All of those things are going to make a difference and matter. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about message clarity. Now, we did talk about it a little bit a minute ago, but I want to go into more deeply your message clarity. What is the purpose of writing your content? Now, we talked about it just briefly a second ago, but I want you to really dig deep here, right? Dig deep and say, what do I want to accomplish with the writing of this, right? Am I looking to educate my customers so that they buy my product? Am I looking to tell my customers about my professionalism? Am I looking to educate people about the differences between hiring me versus hiring somebody else. I use this often in my own writing because in the industry that I'm in, there are a lot of people who will book coach you or help you write your book. There's a ton of people out there. Some of them have never even written their own book, which I always find interesting. How can you possibly do something for someone else that you've never done for yourself? But that's an important piece to understand, is that there's differences between you and the other people who offer the services that you offer. So your why, part of your why, is to educate them about those differences. And then having that clear outline about what you want to write. I see too many people skipping this, so I really wanted to hammer this home. Get a good outline, bullet points, if you will, 3 bullet points. What do I want to say in this? It will prevent you from rambling and meandering all over the place. If you say, in this marketing message, I want to make this point, and this point. Then as you flesh out the pieces, you make sure you're staying on task or on track to what it is you're really trying to accomplish. And then, of course, I already really talked about this a lot, but don't forget who you're writing for. It makes a difference. Who are you writing for or writing about? Okay, enough of that. Let's move on to formatting and structure, which is super important. Here we're talking about paragraph length, short or long, reading ease and level, which we talked a little bit about with the editor, your syntax, which is just the structure of your sentences, sentence length, and justification. Here's a pro tip for you. Many people will not know why something looks off or feels unprofessional, but they are going to notice that something's not right. Have you ever read something and you thought, well, that feels wonky, or that doesn't read right? You might not know why it doesn't feel right unless you have a strong, English background or educational background. And even for me, sometimes I'll read something and I'll think, gosh, that just feels weird. That doesn't read right. Something about it isn't right. It could be the syntax of the sentence. It could be the justification is off. Whatever it is, those kinds of things I notice easily. But sometimes something will, I don't know why this isn't right, but something's not right. So as you read through your paragraph or article or whatever you've written, make sure that you go back and you look at formatting issues. Paragraph length is really important in a book, for instance. Paragraph length when you're in an article in a magazine or in a blog post, those things matter too. That's a chunk of text that people can get overwhelmed by. So you want to make sure that your paragraphs aren't so chunky and so large that it detours people from reading the content. So chunk it up a little bit so that it doesn't look like they're never going to get through that paragraph. Also, you don't want to have it so chopped up into paragraphs that it doesn't make sense. Sometimes sentences do need to go together in a paragraph, or it feels choppy when you try to read it. Then, of course, your reading level is super important based on your audience, and, of course, your sentence length. Now, this frustrates me a little bit in the more professional world, that some people will huge run-on long sentences. Now, while you can use punctuation, you can use semicolons and commas and to make it ultimately make sense, it's just not readable, right? So if you have to read a sentence through and it's 3 or 4 long, if it's a whole paragraph, that's just too long. People are going to have a hard time tracking with that. So see if there isn't a way that you can break them up into shorter sentences and still make sense. If you have to switch back and forth and have too many commas, it's probably too long. So think about, how can I chunk this down so it's not quite so difficult to read? Every time someone has a stop, full stop, or a period, we call them here, it lets their brain take a little break, right? You complete a thought, period, full stop. And then you complete another thought. If there's a comma in there, the brain has to remember the first part in relation to the second part. Now that seems overly simplified perhaps, but just think about that as you're looking at your sentence structure. how your length of your sentence is, and how your length of your paragraph is. Pay attention to that. It's going to make a difference. And then, of course, my biggest soapbox ever in the editing world is 100% about justification. So what is justification? Justification is how your words land on your page. For instance, if you open a book, and I happen to have one here, one of my books, 8 Ways to Mind Your Own Business. And if you look at the pages, can you see that far away? I don't know if you can see that far away. All of the words on both sides line up squarely. This is justified text. So it takes the words and it spreads them out so that it fills from side to side. So there are square edges from your words on both sides. Now, there are some forms of literary works that justification doesn't matter. Now, you could be left justified or right justified. That just means left justified means all of the words move over to your left, and it doesn't matter if the other end, the right side, has widows and orphans, right? Those are things that hang out there by themselves. They're called widows and orphans, and those don't matter as much in things like poetry or some sort of literary works where they want that feeling. Most professional works are going to have completely justified, straight edge on both sides of the text. It feels tidy. It looks tidy. It feels right. Anytime I open a book for the first time, I get books sent to me all the time because as an editor and publisher, people want to send me their works. I get them all the time. When I open them, that is the very first thing that I'm looking at. Is their text fully justified? If it's not, it looks and feels unprofessional, unless it's a book of poetry, and then I give them some leeway and some grace on that. The next thing that I look at is their spacing. Is it easily readable? Did they bother to put the correct formatting in the book? Now, it's not just about books, although a majority of my life and my work is around books because that's what I do for a living. Articles, blog posts, all of those things, it matters. There is a feeling of completeness, a feeling of tidiness, if you will, a feeling of professionalism to fully justified text. Unless you're centering it for some reason for emphasis, which is totally fine, all of your correspondence, all of your articles, all of your blog posts should be fully justified from side to side. That's my biggest soapbox, of course, in the formatting department. All of these things matter when you're putting content out there. This may be the first thing that someone sees about your business, is that article or that blog post or that your book. If that's the first impression they have of your business, what are you conveying to them? What are you saying to them? Are you saying, I am professional? Now, if it's littered with typos and that's a whole nother problem. You clearly didn't get yourself an editor, right? But it says, I don't care enough about my business to be professional about this. I don't know very many places, very many businesses where that's okay to have that attitude. But that is totally up to you because it is your business, ministry, cause, or brand, and we're going to leave that in your court. So there you have it. 3 easy things that you can do to help use writing to build influence. Have good writing preferences down. Have a good, clear message, clarity being important, and then format and structure in your copy, wherever it lives, that's going to say, I'm a professional, and this is what I have to offer you. Whether it's an education, whether it's an ad, whatever it is. It's really that simple. Writing makes a difference. Writing is the quickest way to get your influence out into the world. In fact, if you're looking to build influence rapidly, having your own book, of course, is absolutely the fastest way to build influence. And that is going to organically give you leads. Okay, so if you are not aware, we have a new cohort for the Brainstorm and Blueprint. If you're ready to get that book out of your head and onto paper, then this is for you. We do a live 6-week group coaching to get you started. It to get that book out of your thoughts or off those tablets or your notes and into an outline where you can actually do the work of writing your book. Then we roll over into the private support group where you actually get the writing done. This is where you have peers who have also been through the brainstorm and blueprint process where they're writing their book. So you can swap chapters with each other for encouragement or peer editing. It's also where I pop in weekly to say, here's a new tip, trick, or tool for you. And it's where we connect with each other about upcoming book launches, which is where probably the most fun that people have is. The other stuff is work that still needs to be done, but helping each other out with the launches is really exciting. I encourage you, if you're thinking, it is time, Clara, to get this book out of my head and onto paper, this is the place to start. Brainstorm and Blueprint is what's going to make your book readable and enjoyable for your consumer, for the reader. Keeps you from wandering all over the place, and bonus, it's going to keep you from having writer's block. Writer's block really is just about getting stuck in a spot when you don't know where to go next. The beauty of a blueprint is you always know where to go next. You just follow the outline and do the work, and join us in the private group where we can help encourage you and then help you with your book launch when it's time. Okay, I am out of time, but thank you for once again showing up and spending this time with me. I hope that you will write to build your influence. We'll see you next week.